South Africa and Rwanda embarked on two disparate paths in April 1994. One country towards a democratic election, the other towards a genocide that would kill an estimated 1 million people in just 100 days. Unspoken and sometimes forgotten are the ties that bind these two moments. While South Africa was ushering in democracy, apartheid's personnel had found new opportunities to sow misery in Rwanda in pursuit of profit. This is the story of Willem Ters Ehlers, a naval officer, private secretary to P.W. Botha, and an arms dealer. July 1989. Nelson Mandela, the apartheid regime's most significant political prisoner, met then head of state P.W. Botha in secret. In his autobiography, Mandela described the hour-long interaction as friendly and breezy until the end. Only one photo exists of the meeting. In it, you see Mandela and Botha facing one another in conversation, surrounded by Botha's Minister of Justice, Kwibuka, the head of the prison service, Willem Ters, and the chief of the Civilian Intelligence Service, Neil Barnard. As the story goes, the photo was taken in haste with a point-and-shoot camera by the one other man in the room, Willem Ters Ehlers. Ehlers was no ordinary photographer. As Botha's private secretary, the Commodore was his confidant and belonged to the powerful and paranoid state president's inner circle. 1990. In May 1990, with P.W. Botha ousted from power and Nelson Mandela now free from prison, South Africa's apartheid regime entered into negotiations with the anti-apartheid struggle movement. In October 1990, civil war erupts in Rwanda. 1994. While P.W. Botha's ousting had left Ters Ehlers without a job, the early 1990s and the advent of democracy in South Africa in 1994 would be an opportunity for him and other securocrats to monetize their proximity to the inner workings of the apartheid military establishment. By 1994, Ehlers had branched into international arms dealing for clients around the world. He specialized in securing deals for those facing sanctions and other scrutiny, and thus in need of clandestine deals under which money and arms could be moved in secret. On the 6th of April 1994, Rwandan President Habyarimana's plane was shot down by surface-to-air missiles as it flew into Kigali. His assassination nullified the 1993 Arusha Accords, which had been signed in to end the Rwandan Civil War. This became the catalyst for the genocide that began on the 7th of April. On the 17th of May, 1994, 41 days after the genocide began, the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 918, imposing a mandatory arms embargo on the sale or supply of weapons to Rwanda. However, in June 1994, two consignments of small arms and ammunition made their way from the Seychelles to Goma in Zaire, present-day DRC, and eventually to Gisenyi in Rwanda. The arms were transported on two separate flights between the Seychelles and Goma. A third consignment of arms were intercepted and stopped, following news reports in the Seychelles that the final destination of the arms was Rwanda, in defiance of sanctions on arms sales to Rwanda. The arms came from a Greek ship simply named Malo, which had set sail from Montenegro towards Somalia. The vessel was intercepted by Seychelles authorities in March 1993. This was because Somalia was under a UN embargo due to the conflict there. Moreover, the origin of the weapons was Serbia, which was also under an embargo due to the conflict in the former Yugoslavia. The weapons stockpile included 2,500 AK-47s, 6,000 mortars, and 5,600 fragmentation grenades. The Seychelles government said that they had originally planned to destroy the confiscated weapons, but claimed that they lacked the expertise to do so. Instead, they had reached out to the United States for help, but their request for assistance had been denied. The Seychelles' failure to destroy the weapons and the US refusal to assist led the Seychellois government to put the weapons up for sale. Evidently, the weapons were seized to prevent their transfer from one conflict zone to another, and to prevent further loss of life in Somalia and Yugoslavia. However, as the Seychellois newspaper Rega noted at the time, this move by the Seychelles to then sell the arms to Rwanda could best be described as a greedy and cynical deal. The Marlow arms deal was negotiated in Johannesburg, South Africa, when Rwandan Colonel Theoneste Bagosora traveled to meet Ters Ehlers, whose extensive arms dealing connections with the Seychelles allowed him to secure the Marlow arms for Rwandan genocides. The government of Zaire then issued an end-user certificate in respect of the arms, but on arrival in Goma, in the DRC, they were handed over for the use of the Rwandan government forces, which were at that time still in Gisenyi. The influx of automatic rifles, grenades and mortars into northwestern Rwanda in mid-June 1994 had a significant effect on violence in the region. The weapons Bagosora purchased from Ehlers arrived just before troops and civilian militia departed by bus for Bisesero. Bisesero is a range of hills in western Rwanda. It is about a 3-hour drive from Gisenyi, where the Rwandan armed forces were based at the time, and was one of the main sites that refugees fled to during the genocide. The final attack on Bisesero was one of the FAR's last desperate attacks before many of its leaders fled the country. Preparation for the attack took place in early June 1994 at a meeting in a hotel in Gisenyi, near the FAR base. The result of this coordinated and premeditated assault was devastating and claimed well over 1,000 lives. Those who took part in these murders included the military, militia, and civilians. Other estimates have placed the number of people slain in the Bisesero Hills as high as 50,000 over the entire period of the genocide. Witness accounts and letters indicate that weapons such as those imported by Bagosora and Ehlers were used in the June 1994 attacks. The first of these accounts is in a letter from one regional leader to another, dated 24 June, that confirms the arrival of military forces from Gisenyi. This letter was central to the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda's decision to find Anatole Nsengiyumva guilty of dispatching troops to Bisesero. This important evidence was presented in Edward Karamera's trial in late 2006, and it reliably indicates that firearms were used in the Bisesero assault. The weapons procured by Ehlers and Bagosora included both hand grenades and rifle-propelled grenades. As part of the preparation for the Bisesero assault, grenades were specifically requested. It is impossible to overstate the brutality and the scale of the events in Bisesero, which were very likely worsened by the arms provided by Ehlers and Bagosora. Ehlers' involvement in the covert deal to deliver weapons to Rwanda via the Seychelles was confirmed by a range of investigations in the 4 years after the completion of the deal. The first of these was undertaken by Human Rights Watch, and its findings published in the report, Rearming with Impunity. In an interview on the 15th of February 1995, Bagosora explained how he had been put in touch with Ehlers. By naming Ehlers as his South African accomplice, Bagosora spurred further investigation into the affair. This arms deal was also featured as a case study in a UN Commission of Inquiry into the supply of weapons to Rwandan government forces during the genocide. Swiss cooperation, with regard to the financial flows that made the deal possible, enabled the naming of Ehlers as an end recipient of related payments. Ultimately, the transaction implicates the governments of South Africa, the DRC, the Seychelles, but chiefly Ehlers, who used his experience as well as government and arms dealing connections to connect Bagasora to a stockpile of weapons that would eventually be used in the final acts of genocide in Rwanda. Today, Ters Ehlers lives, unaccountable, in a villa in the affluent suburb of Waterkloof in Pretoria. He remains unaccountable for the act of genocide he aided and abetted in Rwanda in June 1994. This story is part of Open Secrets' report, The Secretary, How Middlemen and Corporations Armed the Rwandan Genocide. You can read and download it from our website, opensecrets.org.za. Open Secrets, Power and Profit, Truth and Justice.